All right, so this question is called, what is the difference between the double equal sign and the triple equal sign? So basically, when somebody is asking you about this particular question, they just want to know, do you understand the difference between values and types in JavaScript? And the easy way to answer this question is, well, the double equal sign basically compares two values, whereas the triple equal sign basically compares two values plus their types, right? So it's a little bit more strict. Now, why would somebody ask you this question? It's a very basic question, but it sets the tone for the rest of the interview, right? If you don't really understand types, then it may be a little bit difficult for you to get the job, because most computer programming jobs, including web development, require that you know a little bit about object-oriented programming, right? And so that's really what I think the interviewer probably wants to know. Do you understand that concept? Do you understand the whole theory behind pretty much, requesting memory from the computer and how much you can use? Do you understand that computers don't have that much memory? It's limited, right? And so when you are working with a program, you have to be really frugal about the memory that you work with, because you're going to only get so much, and then you're sandboxed in, and once you're out of your sandbox, then your computer program may crash, right? And that's definitely the way a lot of apps work now too, especially with the popular iPhone or Android. You get a certain amount of memory, and then you're supposed to just work with it, and when you run out, then your computer program really needs to be smart about how it reuses its own memory, or drops memory that it doesn't need. So it's going to be a really important theme. Even though this is a really basic question, it is really important that you be able to answer this particular question. So with that said, here I'll demonstrate for you the difference between a value and then a type. So I'm going to create a simple variable here, and we'll call it number1, and then I'm going to set it to the value of 0, and then I'm going to create another variable here, and then I'm going to set it to the value of 0 also. But you'll notice, and you know this, that this is a number type, and then this variable is basically a string type, right? It's because you can see that, okay, I've got the double quotes here, whereas this one is just a simple 0. I didn't actually tell strictly to JavaScript that I wanted this value to be a number type, something like this, right? And then string over here. That might be syntax that's appropriate for maybe like C++ or even Java. But in JavaScript, you don't actually have to declare types. The whole idea with JavaScript originally was that it was meant to just be like a simple, easy to pick up language for people to do light coding with. And it was mainly for front end, and more of the back end heavy languages would be more careful with the type, whereas with web development, they just wanted to make a simple language people could use to do like light things within the browser. And I think the programmers at the time who were creating the JavaScript language didn't really expect it to evolve the way it did and the way it is now in 2020 at the time of this video. So in this day and age, you actually have to be more careful about how you write your JavaScript and the types. So continuing this question, right, you'll notice that the values are the same. So if I do something like if number1 equals number2, and let's just go ahead and just have one more variable here called result, and we'll just say it's false. We'll say then set result to true, and then we'll go ahead and just put the value of result on the web page. And so here, for convenience, I'm using ES6 syntax, which allows me to just basically drop in any variable, so long as I put these two brackets around it and a $sign. We call this plugin syntax. So once you drop this variable in here, you'll see that the value is true, because again, these values at number1 and number2, technically they both say 0, and so that's true. It's a true statement, and so this result is actually going to return a true. If I change the value of this particular variable to 1, right, then you see that it becomes false. But again, these are two different objects in memory, and so they have different types and memory requests from the computer. So this is not really that strict of a comparison. And so to fix this, in fact, if you notice that this particular program, Code Sandbox, which is what I'm using to write my code in, is throwing me an error, and it's saying expected a triple equal instead of a double equal sign. And that's because this is a linter program, and the linter program basically helps you by writing better code that is more proficient and will better run in your computer, more performant. And so to fix this, they suggest by using the triple equal sign, you compare both types and values. So now you'll notice that if I put this number back to 0, nothing changes here. It's still false, because a number type is not the same as a string type, right? The amount of memory that they both use is different. And not only that, it's not just the memory, it's also the address at which this particular object lives is different than the particular address for this object. So one more thing to remember in computer science is that whenever you request memory, the computer will give you back basically a pointer to that memory for a large object like a string or a number, and then you basically have to go to that address and then get that value for that particular variable that you've set. And so again, these are a little bit complicated. It's abstracted away from you when you use a language like JavaScript, but moving forward, a lot of people are becoming more strict with their programming, and so that's what this question is about. Do you understand object-oriented programming, right? Like, do you understand like the difference between just writing like, you know, a bunch of code and then like actually having to like think about the amount of memory that you're using and, you know, where your memory is going. So if you don't really know those things, I would say just try to brush up a little bit on, you know, that important concept. But yeah, that's basically the answer to this question, that triple equals is different from double equals in that double equals is basically to compare values. Triple equals is to compare values and types. And then just for bonus, single equal basically is just an assign. So when you say, okay, I'm going to create a variable, you're actually saying, I'm going to give the value of 0 to this particular variable that I just created. If I make this into a singular equal sign, then I've basically changed the value of number 1 to now be equal to number 2, and so you'll see that's why this says true over here. Now number 1 is no longer 0, the number, but it's 0, the string. And so if I were to basically look at the value of number 1 in the console, we'll do that real quick here too. Then I'll pull up the console, you'll notice that this says 0 here, and then if we put type of next to it, you'll see that it's a string, which is odd because this was originally a number, right? So singular equal means assign, whereas double equal means compare the value, and then triple equal means compare the value and the type. So I hope that made sense. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.